I'm Jake, 27, and if you asked most people who knew me growing up, they'd probably tell you I was the lucky one. Straight A student, got a full ride to college, landed a solid tech job after graduation, and probably the part they cared about most, was the only one in the family who ever seemed to make it. What they don't say is that luck came with a price, and it was usually my silence. I stayed quiet when my sister, Carly, got bailed out of her third DUI with my emergency fund. I stayed quiet when my parents borrowed my graduation money to fix their roof and forgot to pay it back. And I especially stayed quiet when I became the family ATM, disguised as the responsible child who could handle a little extra pressure. For years, that was the dynamic. I was the fixer, the helper, the son who'd show up with bags of groceries unprompted, pay for someone's medical bill without asking, or wire money because the car broke down again. And every time I questioned it, it turned into guilt. You're just better off, Jake. You know your sisters had a hard life. You wouldn't let us suffer, would you? Thanksgiving was always the one time I convinced myself it was okay to pretend. I'd fly in, play the good son, watch my mom tear up over dry turkey, and smile while Dad made the same 5 jokes about, when are you going to settle down? I used to think it was worth it. I don't anymore. This past Thanksgiving, something felt different the moment I walked in. There was no Jake. You're here, or overly warm hug from Mom. Just a lukewarm, oh, hi, as she wiped her hands on a dish towel. Carly gave me a once-over and barely looked up from her phone. I chalked it up to stress. They always acted weird when money was tight, and when a drop off the bottle I brought in the kitchen. That's when I noticed the family album sitting out on the coffee table. Now, that thing hadn't made an appearance in years. Last I saw it, it was buried in a box in the attic, filled with all those classic awkward kid photos, me in overalls, Carly missing her 2 front teeth, our parents looking 20 years younger at Christmas. It used to be a staple during holidays. So, I was surprised it was out again. Maybe someone was feeling nostalgic. I picked it up while everyone was busy chatting and flipping between football games, and casually started turning the pages. The first few were fine, baby pictures, birthdays, some blurry vacation shots. But as I kept going, I noticed something odd. Every single photo that had me in it was torn. Not just cut out. Ripped. Sloppily. As if someone had taken a moment to look at me in the picture and then decided I didn't belong. At first, I thought maybe it was an accident. Maybe some pages got stuck, or water damage had ruined them. But no, Carly's face was untouched. There she was in every photo, smiling, laughing, front and center. I flipped through page after page, and every time my face appeared in a picture, it was shredded out. My high school graduation? Just Carly and my parents, smiling in front of a banner I paid for. That Christmas where I bought everyone gifts even though I was living on instant noodles? My gift pile gone, just Carly opening presents. My heart was pounding. My face felt hot. I sat there, staring at the destruction of 27 years of proof that I existed in this family. And not one person said anything. I carefully closed the album and put it back exactly where I found it. I didn't say a word. Dinner that evening was the usual passive-aggressive marathon. Mom criticized the store-bought rolls I brought, even though she'd asked me to bring them. Carly complained about her job, again, and hinted that her rent had gone up. Dad made an offhand comment about young people today wasting money on avocado toast, which was hilarious considering I'd paid off his credit card debt last spring. The whole time, I smiled. I nodded. I laughed at their jokes. But inside, something had cracked. Something had finally, fully broken. After dessert, while Mom was fussing over dishes and Carly was scrolling TikTok like a teenager, I quietly pulled out the envelope I'd brought with me. It was simple. White. No label. I laid it down on the dining table. What's this? Carly asked, eyeing it like it might explode. It's not for here, I said calmly. Open it later. Of course, that meant she opened it immediately. She slid the letter out and started reading. At first, her expression was confusion. Then, anger. She handed it to Mom, who read it with trembling hands. I watched her eyes scan the page. Her mouth dropped open just slightly. She clutched her chest like she'd been winded. And then, she started crying. Not just sniffling. Sobbing. The kind of crying you do when you realize something's not just broken, but shattered. My dad, who was halfway through pouring himself a drink, froze. He took the letter from my mom and read it. Slowly, line by line. His hands started to shake. His lips pressed into a thin, tight line. But he didn't say a word. No one did. And that's where I left them. The letter, written days before, was short, but it carried the weight of years. I had gone over it 100 times, rewriting and deleting and second-guessing. But in the end, it said exactly what it needed to. I told them I was done. Done being the safety net. Done being the scapegoat. Done pretending this family was built on love instead of manipulation. I reminded them of every time they'd taken from me emotionally, financially, mentally, and how they'd never once offered anything back except expectation and blame. I told them I saw the album. I saw what they'd done, and it was the last insult I'd accept. I explained that I would no longer be covering Carly's rent, that I would not be helping with Dad's medical bills or Mom's car repairs, that the next time someone hit rock bottom, they'd need to figure it out without me. And finally, I told them I wasn't coming back. Not for Christmas. Not for birthdays. Not for anything. As the room filled with silence, I picked up my coat, gave them one last glance, and walked out the door. But that's not even the craziest part. Because what happened next? Well, let's just say they didn't take it quietly. By the time I reached my car, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the neighborhood bathed in this weird, grayish dusk. Everything looked cold. Even the houses with those cheerful, early Christmas lights seemed to buzz with this artificial warmth that didn't touch me. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine off, fingers gripping the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I wasn't sure what I expected. Yelling? Guilt-tripping? Maybe Mom running out to the driveway, mascara streaking down her cheeks, begging me not to do this to the family? Instead, nothing. Not a single word followed me out. Just silence. That almost made it worse. It was the kind of silence that didn't mean shock. It meant calculation. Retaliation. And I knew my family well enough to know they wouldn't let this go without a response. I drove back to my Airbnb across town, a tiny one-bedroom with creaky floors and a heater that hummed like a lawnmower. It was ugly, but it was mine. I threw my bag down and sat on the bed, staring at my phone. No messages. No missed calls. I waited an hour. Still nothing. The next day, it began. At first, it was subtle. I woke up to a vague Facebook post from Carly. Some people really show their true colors when money's off the table. Followed by the kind of vague inspirational quote that made her feel like she was the wounded party. Family is supposed to be your safe place, not your battlefield. Classic Carly. Passive-aggressive, just public enough to stir sympathy but not specific enough to warrant confrontation. Then Mom joined in. Her post was more dramatic. A black and white photo of her and Carly when she was a baby, captioned, "No matter what happens, I'll always be proud of my girl. Loyalty matters more than money." I didn't respond. I didn't even react. I knew they were hoping I'd take the bait, that I'd jump in to defend myself or try to explain. But this wasn't a conversation. This was performance art. But what I didn't expect was what came next, the phone calls to my friends. Some background. Back in high school, I had this tight-knit group of 3 friends, Ben, Marcus, and Layla. We'd stayed in touch over the years, met up when I was in town, shared group chats, and the occasional game night over Zoom. They knew my family was complicated, but I never really unloaded on them. I always felt like talking about it too much made it real in a way I wasn't ready to admit. Apparently, my mom didn't feel the same hesitation. Marcus texted me first. "Hey man, weird question. Did something happen with your family? Your mom called me. Said she's worried about you." Then Ben. "Yo, got a voicemail from your mom. Something about you being under stress and needing people around you? She okay?" Even Layla, who hadn't talked to my mom in years, messaged me, "Your mom found my number through an old directory from college. She said you're pushing everyone away and asked me to reach out." What's going on? It was surreal. They were trying to stage an intervention on me. After cutting them off, the worst part was that I almost fell for it. A small voice in my head started whispering, "Maybe you overreacted. Maybe they're just hurt. Maybe this is all just a misunderstanding." But then I remembered the photos. The way they didn't even flinch when I saw the album. The way my existence had been scrubbed from family history like an inconvenience. They weren't hurt. They were caught. Still, I felt sick. Not because I regretted anything, but because it confirmed something I'd been denying for a long time. I wasn't their son. I was their investment. And now that the returns had dried up, I was being liquidated. I sent a group message to my friends, calmly explaining what happened. I didn't rant. I didn't badmouth anyone. I just laid it out, point by point. The years of manipulation, the money, the guilt, the photos, the letter, and how I was finally choosing peace over obligation. Their responses were unanimous. "Ben, dude, that's..." I don't even have words. I'm proud of you. You deserve better than that circus. Layla, I'm so sorry you went through that. Thank you for trusting us enough to tell us. Whatever you need, I've got your back. Marcus, families are supposed to love you, not drain you. You did the right thing. Seriously, that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because 2 days later, I got a call from my boss. Now, I work remotely for a mid-sized tech company. I've always kept work and family completely separate. But somehow, my mom found a way in. Apparently, she'd called my company's front desk and asked to speak to HR, said she was worried about her son's mental state, and thought they should be aware of some dangerous behavior. Let me repeat that. My mother tried to tank my career because I wouldn't pay for her lifestyle anymore. Thankfully, my boss is a level-headed guy. He told me about the call privately, said he figured something weird was going on, and that I might want to handle it personally. He even offered me some PTO if I needed to clear my head. I declined. I needed the structure, the normalcy, something to hold onto while my entire sense of family collapsed like a cheap card table. That night, I finally blocked my mom's number, and Carly's, and even my dad's, though he hadn't reached out once since I left, unless you count liking Carly's pity posts on Facebook. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I was wrong, because a few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just 4 words written in all caps. You owe us everything. And just like that, the game changed. I sat at my tiny Airbnb kitchen table, holding that letter like it might combust in my hands. The paper trembled a little, not from some dramatic wind or anything, but because my fingers were shaking. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was something colder, more surgical, like the feeling right before you put pressure on a wound you know needs stitches. I stared at those 4 words for a long time. You owe us everything. Everything. Not thanks for everything you've done. Not please let's talk. Not even how could you. Just owe. Like I was property. Like they were collecting on a debt. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't fighting for respect anymore. I was just trying to escape a contract I never signed. I sat back, letting the envelope drop to the table. I felt this strange calm come over me. The kind you only get after you stop hoping things can go back to how they were. That tiny part of me, the kid who still believed his parents loved him unconditionally, finally gave up the ghost. And once it did, I started thinking differently. Sharper. Like an engineer breaking down a faulty circuit. What had I done wrong? Where was the system broken? That night, I pulled out my laptop and started compiling everything. Not for revenge, not yet, just clarity. I went through my bank statements for the last 6 years. Every wire transfer to Carly. Every payment to my parents' utility bills. Every loan that was never repaid. The total made my stomach twist. I'd known it was a lot, but this? It was almost 6 figures. Rent, credit card bailouts, down payments, car repairs, private school tuition for Carly's kid, even groceries. And none of it ever came with a thank you. Just expectation. I added screenshots of texts. The ones where my mom said things like, "You wouldn't leave us struggling, would you?" Or, "You don't want Carly and the baby to get evicted." The ones where I said yes, even when I was on ramen and scraping by. And then I found something I'd forgotten all about. It was a recording. Just audio, saved automatically to my phone. From 3 months earlier, when I had visited for my dad's birthday and accidentally hit the record button, it recorded their conversation while I went away for a minute. I remembered the visit being tense, but I had chalked it up to general dysfunction. What I heard on the recording, it was something else. It started with my mom whispering to Carly in the kitchen while I was supposedly outside. "We have to keep him close, okay? Don't make him mad. Not until after the mortgage clears. Once the refinance goes through, then he can do whatever he wants. Carly, he's already pulling back. He asked for the receipts from the car thing. Mom, so? Fake some. You know how to do that. He's too busy to check. Dad." While laughing, he won't walk away. "He's too soft. Always has been." It was like listening to strangers. Like a family I had only imagined in nightmares. Not one of them sounded even a little conflicted. They were strategizing, planning, like I was a business deal, or a checkbook with arms. I pressed stop. That was the final nail in the coffin. The letter, the calls, the silence, the Facebook melodrama, they were symptoms. This recording? This was the disease. Still, I didn't act. Not yet. I wanted to. Believe me. Every fiber of my being wanted to send them a copy with "Congratulations, you played yourselves" in giant font. But this wasn't going to be another emotional outburst. They'd see that coming. No, if I was going to end this, really end it, I had to be patient, strategic, like they had been. So I waited. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't post anything. I didn't even talk to my friends about it beyond a simple "things are still weird." I wanted them to think I was hurt, maybe even regretting it. That's when people like my family get bold, when they think you're vulnerable again. And I was right. 3 days later, I got an email from my mom. No subject line, just one sentence. "You can still fix this if you stop being dramatic." Attached was a scanned letter. It was from a lawyer, hers. Apparently, they were exploring legal options regarding unfulfilled family obligations, and if I refused to support Carly during her custody case, they'd be forced to consider consequences. I stared at it, numb. They were threatening to sue me for not supporting my adult sister in court. I didn't even know what to do with that. What were they going to sue me for? Not paying her lawyer bills? Not emotionally babysitting her through her custody battle with a guy she had dated for 3 weeks? At first, I almost laughed. The absurdity was overwhelming. But the more I sat with it, the more it started to burn. Because even if it was baseless, even if it never made it to a courtroom, it was the principle. They were trying to punish me for pulling away, to teach me a lesson. And that's when I realized I'd been thinking too small. They wanted a lesson? Fine. I'd give them one they'd never forget. For the next 2 weeks, I went quiet. On the outside, I played it cool. No dramatic posts, no angry emails, no frantic responses. Just silence. But on the inside, I was preparing. First, I lawyered up. Not because I thought they had a real case. They didn't. But because I wanted to be protected. I found a small but sharp attorney who specialized in family law and harassment cases. After one meeting and a look at the fake legal thread, he smirked and said, "This won't hold water. But let's hit back harder." Then I took all the receipts I'd gathered, the wire transfers, the texts, the emails, even the recording. I organized them into a neat little digital file titled "Family Exploitation Evidence." It was over 80 pages long. I gave it to my lawyer, who helped me draft a cease and desist letter citing harassment, emotional distress, and financial exploitation. We didn't just demand that they back off. We stated, clearly and formally, that any further attempts to contact me, pressure me financially, or defame me publicly would result in a civil suit. We'd even calculated an approximate value of everything they had taken over the years. It was 6 figures. Then, I mailed the letter. Certified, return receipt requested. One to each of them, Mom, Dad, Carly. But I didn't stop there. Remember how my mom had contacted my workplace? That call had crossed a major line. So, I had my attorney send a formal complaint to the HR department of her job. She worked part-time at a local clinic. It wasn't malicious, it was factual. I explained the situation, backed it with evidence, and mentioned how her false claims to my employer had caused unnecessary professional stress. I didn't ask them to fire her. I just wanted them aware of her behavior. But I knew how small towns worked. Word would spread. Then came the final step. One by one, I reached out to extended family, the ones I'd always kept at arm's length because I didn't want to air dirty laundry. My mom's sister, my dad's cousin, even my late grandmother's best friend, who'd always sent me handwritten cards. I didn't send them a manifesto or a dramatic tell-all, just a simple message. "Hey, just so you know, there's been a lot of drama on Mom and Carly's side. I'm stepping away from the family for my mental health. If you hear anything wild, feel free to check in with me directly." Some ignored me, but a few responded, and once I shared a bit more, they were stunned. One even said, "That explains why your mom's been spinning this whole story about you being ungrateful." I thought it sounded off. Exactly. The fallout was slow but satisfying. Carly tried to stir sympathy online, posting more cryptic quotes and passive-aggressive digs, but without me funding her rent or legal costs, her custody case started to fall apart. Her ex filed for full custody, and he won. I wasn't happy about it, especially for her kid, but I didn't feel guilty either. I had tried to help for years, and she'd used me. My dad didn't reach out. Not once. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he didn't care. Either way, silence suited me just fine. My mom, on the other hand, didn't give up so easily. After getting the cease and desist, she went quiet for a few days. Then, she sent a handwritten letter, mailed to my old address, which luckily was forwarded. It was 5 pages long, rambling, defensive, full of the usual guilt tactics. We're your only family. You misunderstood everything. We only ever wanted what's best for you. I read it once. Then I fed it into the shredder. I haven't spoken to them since. It's been about 6 months now. I moved into a new apartment, my own place, no family photos on the wall, just peace. I finally booked a trip I'd been putting off for years. Greece. I stood on a cliff in Santorini, overlooking the water, thinking about how much of my life I'd spent carrying other people's weight. And for the first time, I felt light. Not because I got revenge, not because I won, but because I stopped letting people who didn't love me conditionally define what I owed them. They had taken a lot from me. Time, money, memories. But the one thing I refused to let them keep was me. And that, I think, was the real victory.